Imagine discovering your long-lost children living in a millionaire's mansion, hidden in plain sight. What would you do? This story is filled with twists, heartache, and a fight for family you won't want to miss. If you're ready for a journey of love and resilience, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and let us know in the comments, where are you watching from? Let's dive in. Grace Walker had been working as a housekeeper at the prestigious Harrington estate for the past 6 years. The sprawling mansion, nestled in the quiet hills of Vermont, was the pride of its owner, Nicholas Harrington, a reclusive yet powerful businessman known for his sharp mind and icy demeanor. Grace, however, found solace in the routine of her work, maintaining the grand halls and pristine gardens with meticulous care. One chilly autumn afternoon, Grace was cleaning the rarely used east wing of the mansion when she heard faint giggles echoing down the corridor. She paused, confused. Nicholas Harrington was away on business, and as far as she knew, the house was empty. Setting aside her duster, she followed the sound, her heart pounding with curiosity. The trail led her to a room she had never noticed before, a locked door at the end of the hallway. It seemed out of place, as if it didn't belong in the blueprint of the house she knew so well. Grace hesitated, then tried the handle. Locked. Her pulse quickened as she remembered seeing a set of spare keys in the utility closet earlier that day. She rushed to retrieve them, her thoughts racing. Returning with the keys, Grace unlocked the mysterious door and slowly pushed it open. What she saw took her breath away. The room was warm and inviting, filled with soft lighting, toys scattered across the floor, and 2 small children, a boy and a girl, both no older than 6. They were seated on a plush rug, engrossed in building a block tower. Their laughter was infectious, but it was their appearance that stopped Grace in her tracks. The children had the same bright blue eyes and wavy chestnut hair that Grace had seen in the mirror every day of her life. Her knees weakened as a realization hit her like a thunderbolt. These children looked just like her. "Hello," she managed to say, her voice trembling. The children looked up, startled but not frightened. The boy tilted his head curiously. "Hi," he said, his voice soft and innocent. "What are your names?" Grace asked, her heart pounding. "I'm Lucas, and this is my sister, Lily," the boy answered, pointing to the girl beside him. Grace's vision blurred with tears. Lucas and Lily. Those were the names she had given to her twins, the children she thought she had lost forever. 6 years ago, under tragic circumstances, they had been taken from her in a custody battle she had fought with all her might but ultimately lost. The memories of that painful time resurfaced, overwhelming her. "What are you doing here?" she whispered, her voice shaking. The children shrugged innocently. "We live here now," Lily said, her voice as sweet as Grace had imagined it would be. Grace's head spun. How could her children be here, in Nicholas Harrington's estate? Why hadn't she known? She felt a surge of conflicting emotions, relief, confusion, anger, and an overwhelming need for answers. Before she could ask anything further, a voice startled her. "Grace?" It was Thomas, the head butler, standing in the doorway. His brow furrowed as he looked at her. "What are you doing in here?" Grace straightened, trying to mask the whirlwind of emotions coursing through her. "Who are these children, Thomas?" she demanded, her voice firmer than she intended. Thomas's face tightened, but he avoided her gaze. "You shouldn't be in this room," he said simply, stepping forward as if to block her from the children. Grace's frustration boiled over. "I deserve to know. Why are these children here? They look like me." Thomas hesitated, then sighed heavily. "You should speak to Mr. Harrington. This isn't my story to tell." With that, he ushered the children gently out of the room, leaving Grace standing in stunned silence. Her hands trembled as she clenched them into fists. She knew Nicholas Harrington was the only one who could provide answers, and she was determined to get them. For the first time in years, Grace felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. If these children were truly her twins, she was willing to fight tooth and nail to uncover the truth and bring them back into her life. But deep down, she also feared what Nicholas Harrington might reveal when she confronted him. Grace Walker didn't sleep that night. She lay awake in her small room on the estate, staring at the ceiling, her thoughts consumed by the two children she had seen. Lucas and Lily. She could still hear their laughter echoing in her mind, feel the pang of recognition that had struck her heart. How could they be here, living under the same roof, without her knowledge? By morning, her resolve was set. She needed answers, and only one person could provide them, Nicholas Harrington. Nicholas was a man of power and precision, known for running his businesses with ruthless efficiency. But he was also a man of secrets, his private life as enigmatic as his stern demeanor. Grace had worked in his home for years and barely knew anything about him beyond his reputation and occasional polite exchanges. As the sun rose over the sprawling estate, Grace prepared herself for the confrontation. She dressed carefully, choosing an outfit that made her feel composed and professional. Though her heart raced with nerves, she reminded herself why she was doing this, for Lucas and Lily. Nicholas had returned from his business trip late the previous night, and Grace knew he would be in his study early, as he always was after traveling. She made her way down the quiet hallways of the mansion, her footsteps barely audible on the polished wooden floors. When she reached the heavy oak door of the study, she paused, gathering her courage before knocking. "Come in," came Nicholas's deep voice from the other side. Grace pushed the door open and stepped inside. The study was as imposing as the man himself, lined with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk dominating the center of the room, and a fireplace crackling softly in the corner. Nicholas sat behind the desk, his sharp eyes scanning documents as he sipped his morning coffee. He looked up, his piercing gray eyes narrowing slightly in surprise. "Grace," he said, setting down his cup. "What brings you here? Is something wrong?" She took a deep breath, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. "Mr. Harrington, I need to speak with you about something important. It's about the children." Nicholas's expression didn't change, but Grace noticed the subtle tension that flickered across his features. He leaned back in his chair, gesturing for her to continue. "Go on." Grace stepped closer, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "Yesterday, I found two children in the East Wing, Lucas and Lily. They look exactly like my twins, the ones I lost 6 years ago." Her voice cracked, but she pressed on. "I need to know how they got here and why they're in this house." Nicholas's gaze hardened, and for a moment, silence filled the room. Then he leaned forward, folding his hands on the desk. "Grace, this is not a simple matter." "That's not good enough," she said, her voice rising. "Those children are mine, I know they are. Please, just tell me the truth." Nicholas sighed, rubbing his temples. "All right," he said finally. "You deserve to know the truth." Grace's heart pounded as she waited for him to continue. "6 years ago, I was approached by a woman named Margaret Lane," Nicholas began. "She claimed she was a social worker and that she had 2 children in desperate need of a safe place. She said their parents couldn't care for them and that their future was at risk. I agreed to take them in temporarily, as a favor to an old friend." Grace's breath hitched. "Margaret Lane? I don't know that name. Did she say anything about their parents?" Nicholas shook his head. "No. She was vague about the details, only saying that the situation was urgent and that the children needed stability. I didn't press for more information, I trusted her." "But why didn't you tell me?" Grace demanded, her voice breaking. "Why didn't anyone tell me my children were here?" Nicholas's jaw tightened. "I didn't know they were your children, Grace. If I had known, things would have been different. Margaret disappeared shortly after leaving them here. I tried to contact her, but she was untraceable. Over time, I decided to let the children stay, they had nowhere else to go." Tears streamed down Grace's face as she absorbed his words. They've been here all this time, and I didn't know. Do they know who I am? Nicholas hesitated. No. They don't know anything about their past. They've grown up thinking of this place as their home. The weight of his words crushed her. For 6 years, her children had been within reach, yet she had been kept in the dark. Anger and sorrow swirled inside her, but one emotion rose above the rest: determination. I want them back, Grace said firmly. They're my children, and I won't leave this house without them. Nicholas regarded her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he nodded slowly. I understand. But this won't be easy. Lucas and Lily have grown attached to this place. Taking them away suddenly could be traumatic. Grace clenched her fists. I don't care how hard it is. I've spent years grieving for them, searching for them. I'm their mother, and they deserve to know the truth. Nicholas sighed again, standing from his chair. If that's what you want, then we'll proceed carefully. But Grace, you must promise me one thing: put their well-being first. This isn't just about you, it's about what's best for them. Grace met his gaze, her resolve unshaken. I will do whatever it takes to make this right. They're my children, and I won't fail them again. Nicholas nodded, his expression softening slightly. All right. We'll start by talking to them together. But be prepared, this won't be easy for any of us. Grace swallowed the lump in her throat, her heart aching with both hope and fear. She had waited years for this moment, and now that it was within reach, she vowed to fight for her children with everything she had. The following morning, Grace Walker woke with a nervous energy that coursed through her veins. Today was the day she would speak to Lucas and Lily, her children. She had waited years for this moment, and now that it was finally here, a whirlwind of emotions consumed her: hope, fear, excitement, and doubt. Nicholas Harrington had arranged for the meeting to take place in the children's playroom. Grace spent the morning preparing herself, mentally rehearsing what she would say. Her hands trembled as she dressed in her best outfit, wanting to appear calm and approachable. She wanted Lucas and Lily to see her for who she was, their mother. When the time came, Grace walked to the playroom, her heart pounding in her chest. Nicholas was already there, standing near the window with his arms crossed. Lucas and Lily were seated on the floor, laughing as they played a game of cards. The sight of them, so carefree and happy, brought tears to Grace's eyes. Nicholas turned to her as she entered, his face unreadable. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of the weight of the moment. Grace, he said, his voice steady, it's time. Grace took a deep breath and stepped closer. The children looked up, their laughter fading as they noticed her presence. Lucas tilted his head, curiosity flickering in his bright blue eyes. Hi, he said, his voice soft. Grace knelt down, her hands clasped tightly in front of her. Hi, Lucas. Hi, Lily, she said, her voice trembling. My name is Grace. I've been waiting a long time to meet you. The children exchanged puzzled glances. Why? Lily asked, her small voice filled with innocent curiosity. Grace glanced at Nicholas, who gave her an encouraging nod. She turned back to the children, her heart aching with the weight of what she was about to say. Because I'm your mother. The words hung in the air, heavy and unshakable. Lucas and Lily stared at her, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief. Our mother. Lucas repeated, his brow furrowing. But, we don't have a mom. Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as she reached out a trembling hand. You do, she said softly. It's me. I've been looking for you ever since you were taken away from me. Lily's lip quivered as she clung to her brother's arm. Taken away? What do you mean? Nicholas stepped forward, his voice calm and steady. Children, there's something you need to understand. Grace has been searching for you for many years. When you came to live here, we didn't know she was your mother. But now that we do, she wants to be a part of your lives." Lucas's eyes filled with tears, his young mind struggling to process the revelation. "Why didn't you tell us?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Why didn't we know?" Grace felt her heart break at his words. "Because I didn't know you were here," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "I thought I had lost you forever. But now that I've found you, I promise I'll never let you go again." Lily buried her face in her brother's shoulder, her small frame shaking with sobs. "Why did you leave us?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. Grace's tears spilled over as she reached for her daughter, her hands shaking. "I didn't leave you, sweetheart. You were taken from me. I fought so hard to keep you, but I couldn't stop it. I'm so sorry." Lucas wrapped his arms protectively around Lily, his young face a mixture of confusion and anger. "Who took us? Why did they take us away from you?" Nicholas intervened gently, kneeling beside the children. "That's a story for another time," he said, his voice firm but kind. "What's important now is that Grace is here, and she loves you very much." Lily peeked out from behind her brother, her tear-streaked face filled with uncertainty. "Do you really love us?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Grace's heart ached as she nodded fervently. "More than anything in the world," she said. "I've never stopped loving you. Not for a single moment." For a long moment, the room was silent except for the soft sound of Lily's sniffles. Then, slowly, Lucas released his sister and stepped toward Grace. He looked up at her, his blue eyes searching hers. "If you love us," he said quietly, "will you stay with us?" Grace's breath caught, and she felt a surge of hope. "Yes, Lucas," she said, her voice trembling. "I'll stay with you. I'll do whatever it takes to be here for you." Lily hesitated, then reached out for Grace's hand. Grace took it gently, tears streaming down her face. The warmth of her daughter's small hand in hers was a feeling she thought she would never experience again. Nicholas watched the scene unfold, his normally stoic expression softening. He cleared his throat, drawing their attention. "This is the start of something new," he said. "It won't be easy, but we'll figure it out together." Grace looked up at him, her gratitude shining through her tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "For keeping them safe." Nicholas gave a small nod. "They deserve to know the truth. And they deserve to have you in their lives." As the children began to warm to Grace, the weight of the moment slowly lifted. They asked tentative questions, their young minds seeking to make sense of the sudden changes in their lives. Grace answered as best as she could, her heart swelling with hope as she saw the beginnings of trust in their eyes. For the first time in years, Grace felt whole. She had found her children, and though the journey ahead would be challenging, she was ready to face it with everything she had. She silently vowed to make up for the lost years and to build a future where Lucas and Lily would never doubt her love again. The days following Grace Walker's revelation to Lucas and Lily were a delicate balance of hope and uncertainty. Grace spent every moment she could with the children, trying to bridge the 6 years of separation that felt like a lifetime. But it was clear from their cautious expressions and hesitant words that the process of rebuilding trust and connection would take time. Nicholas Harrington had given Grace the freedom to focus on the children, adjusting her responsibilities at the estate. Though he maintained his usual stern exterior, there was a subtle kindness in the way he supported her efforts, ensuring she had the space and resources needed to nurture the fragile reunion. On a crisp autumn morning, Grace found herself sitting with Lucas and Lily in the estate's sprawling garden. The golden leaves crunched beneath their feet as they explored the grounds, the children's curiosity bringing a sense of lightness to the otherwise heavy circumstances. "Do you like it here?" Grace asked gently as they stopped by a small koi pond, the sunlight dancing on the water's surface. Lucas shrugged, glancing at his sister before replying. "It's nice. Mr. Harrington always takes care of us. But, it's different now." Lily nodded, clutching a small stuffed rabbit that Grace had learned was her favorite toy. "It feels weird," she admitted, her voice soft. "I like you, but I don't know you." Grace's heart ached at the honesty in their words. She crouched down to their level, her eyes filled with both determination and vulnerability. "I understand," she said. "It's okay to feel that way. I know we've been apart for a long time, and I can't change that. But I want you to know that I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere." Lily looked at her brother, seeking reassurance. Lucas, always the more protective of the two, took her hand and turned back to Grace. "Are you really going to stay?" he asked, his voice tinged with both skepticism and hope. Grace reached out, her hands steady despite the emotions swirling inside her. "I promise, Lucas. No matter what, I'll always be here for you and Lily." The sincerity in her voice seemed to ease some of the tension. Lucas nodded slowly, though the uncertainty in his eyes remained. Later that day, Grace sat in the estate's kitchen, her thoughts swirling as she prepared snacks for the children. Nicholas entered, his presence as commanding as ever. He placed a file on the counter, catching her attention. "I've had my legal team start looking into the custody case from 6 years ago," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's important to understand exactly what happened and whether we can legally transition the children back into your care." Grace wiped her hands on a dish towel, her nerves tightening. "Do you think it's possible?" Nicholas regarded her with a measured expression. "It won't be easy," he admitted. "The circumstances of their placement here were unusual, and there are likely gaps in the paperwork. Margaret Lane left behind a trail of unanswered questions. But I believe we can make a case for you." Grace felt a flicker of hope, though it was tempered by the daunting reality of the legal battle ahead. "Thank you, Nicholas," she said sincerely. "I don't know what I would do without your help." Nicholas waved off her gratitude. "This is about the children," he said simply. "They deserve to be with their mother if that's what's best for them." As the weeks passed, Grace worked tirelessly to reconnect with Lucas and Lily. She introduced small routines into their days, helping them with homework, reading bedtime stories, and teaching them how to bake cookies in the estate's grand kitchen. These moments, though small, became the foundation of their growing bond. One evening, as Grace tucked Lily into bed, the little girl reached out and took her hand. "Can you stay with me until I fall asleep?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Grace's heart swelled with emotion as she sat on the edge of the bed, stroking Lily's hair. "Of course, sweetheart," she said softly. "I'll be right here." As Lily's breathing slowed and she drifted off to sleep, Grace felt a sense of peace she hadn't experienced in years. These quiet moments of trust reminded her that progress, though slow, was being made. Lucas, however, remained more guarded. While he participated in activities with Grace and Lily, there was a distance in his demeanor that Grace struggled to bridge. She knew he was protecting both himself and his sister, wary of getting too close too quickly. One afternoon, as they played a board game in the living room, Grace decided to address the elephant in the room. "Lucas," she began gently, "I know this is all very new and probably confusing for you. But I want you to know that it's okay to feel however you feel." Lucas looked up from the game, his expression unreadable. I don't know if it's real," he admitted. "What if you leave again?" Grace's chest tightened at his words. She reached across the table, placing her hand over his. "I understand why you might think that," she said softly. "But I promise you, Lucas, I will never leave you or Lily again. You mean everything to me." For a moment, Lucas didn't respond. Then, slowly, he gave a small nod. It wasn't a full acceptance, but it was a step forward, and Grace held on to that glimmer of hope. Despite the progress Grace was making with the children, challenges loomed on the horizon. The legal investigation into Margaret Lane's actions revealed troubling details. It appeared that she had falsified documents to place the children in Nicholas's care, bypassing the proper channels and leaving their custody in a precarious legal state. Nicholas shared the findings with Grace late one evening, his expression grim. "This complicates things," he said. "If the courts get involved, they may decide to place the children in foster care rather than granting custody to you." Grace's stomach dropped. "No," she said firmly. "I won't let that happen. Lucas and Lily belong with me." Nicholas nodded. "I'll do everything I can to support you. But we need to be prepared for a fight." Grace's determination only grew stronger. She knew the road ahead would be difficult, but she was willing to face any obstacle for the chance to rebuild her family. For Lucas and Lily, she would move mountains. As the estate settled into quiet that night, Grace stood outside the children's rooms, listening to their soft breathing as they slept. Her heart swelled with both love and resolve. No matter what challenges lay ahead, she knew one thing for certain: she would fight for her children with everything she had. They were worth it. The revelation about Margaret Lane's fraudulent actions weighed heavily on Grace Walker. The path to regaining custody of Lucas and Lily, once a hopeful dream, now seemed fraught with obstacles. Despite the challenges, Grace's resolve remained unshaken. She was determined to fight for her children, no matter how complicated the journey became. Nicholas Harrington, true to his word, threw his considerable resources behind Grace's case. His legal team, led by the formidable attorney Evelyn Carter, began piecing together the intricate puzzle of Margaret Lane's actions and the irregularities surrounding the twins' placement in the Harrington estate. Evelyn was a sharp, no-nonsense woman with a reputation for winning even the toughest cases, and she quickly became an invaluable ally. "This is going to be a battle," Evelyn said during one of their strategy meetings in the estate study. "Margaret's actions have created a legal mess, and the courts may be reluctant to simply hand custody back to you, Grace. We need to prove that you're not only their biological mother but also their best chance at a stable and loving home." Grace sat across from Evelyn, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I'll do whatever it takes," she said firmly. "I just want my children to know they're loved and safe." Evelyn nodded. "Good. The first step is establishing a solid narrative. We'll need character references, evidence of your efforts to find them, and proof that you're capable of providing for them now." Nicholas, who had been silently observing the conversation, finally spoke. "I'll testify on Grace's behalf," he said. "The children have lived under my care for years, and I can vouch for her dedication and ability to be a great mother." Grace glanced at him, her heart swelling with gratitude. "Thank you, Nicholas. That means so much." As the legal team worked tirelessly to prepare for the custody hearing, tensions in the estate began to rise. Lucas and Lily sensed the growing stress, and their questions became more frequent and pointed. "Why do we have to talk to a judge?" Lucas asked one evening as Grace helped him with his homework. His voice was tinged with frustration. "Why can't things just stay the way they are?" Grace paused, her heart aching at the confusion in his eyes. She knelt beside him, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. "I know this is hard to understand, Lucas," she said softly. "But the judge needs to hear from all of us to make sure we're doing what's best for you and Lily. I want you to feel safe and happy, and this is part of making that happen." Lily, sitting nearby with her stuffed rabbit, looked up with wide eyes. "Are we going to have to leave?" Grace shook her head quickly. "No, sweetheart," she said firmly. "I'm doing everything I can to make sure you stay with me. I promise." Despite her reassurances, Grace could see the uncertainty lingering in their expressions. She knew that no matter how hard she tried, the situation was taking a toll on the children, and it broke her heart. The day of the custody hearing arrived, bringing with it a mix of anxiety and hope. Grace dressed carefully in a modest but elegant outfit, her nerves frayed as she prepared to face the court. Nicholas accompanied her to the courthouse, a steady and reassuring presence by her side. Inside the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense. Margaret Lane's actions were brought to light, painting a picture of deception and desperation. Evelyn presented evidence of Grace's tireless efforts to locate her children over the years, letters, records of inquiries, and even testimony from private investigators she had hired. Grace's own testimony was emotional but heartfelt. She spoke of the pain of losing Lucas and Lily, the emptiness that had consumed her life, and the unwavering love that had kept her searching for them. She shared stories of the bond they were beginning to rebuild, her voice trembling with emotion as she described the small moments of connection that meant the world to her. Nicholas took the stand next, his calm and authoritative demeanor commanding the court's attention. "Lucas and Lily have lived in my home for years," he said. "They're remarkable children, and Grace is a remarkable woman. I've seen her dedication to them firsthand, and I have no doubt that she is capable of providing them with the love and stability they deserve." The opposing side, representing the interests of child welfare services, raised concerns about uprooting the children from the only home they had known. They argued that the transition could be disruptive and traumatic, suggesting that alternative placements be considered. Grace's heart sank as she listened, but Evelyn remained steadfast, countering each argument with precision and evidence. She emphasized the importance of reuniting Lucas and Lily with their biological mother and the positive impact it would have on their emotional well-being. After hours of testimony and deliberation, the judge called the court to order to deliver the verdict. Grace sat on the edge of her seat, her hands trembling as she clung to Nicholas's reassuring gaze. After reviewing the evidence and considering the best interests of the children, the judge began, "I find that Grace Walker has demonstrated her unwavering commitment to her children and her ability to provide them with a stable and loving home. Custody of Lucas and Lily is hereby granted to Grace Walker." The words hit Grace like a tidal wave, and tears streamed down her face as relief and joy washed over her. She turned to Nicholas, who gave her a rare but genuine smile, his own eyes reflecting pride and satisfaction. "Thank you," Grace whispered to him, her voice choked with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without you." Nicholas simply nodded, his usual stoicism softened by the moment. That evening, back at the Harrington estate, Grace sat with Lucas and Lily in their favorite spot by the koi pond. The children, still processing the news, leaned against her, their small hands clutching hers. "Does this mean we're going home with you?" Lucas asked, his voice hesitant but hopeful. Grace smiled, her heart full. "Yes, Lucas," she said softly. "It means we're a family again." Lily rested her head on Grace's shoulder, her voice a quiet whisper. "I'm glad you found us." Tears welled up in Grace's eyes as she kissed the top of her daughter's head. "Me too, sweetheart," she said. "Me too." Though the road ahead would undoubtedly have its challenges, Grace knew that she and her children were finally where they belonged, together. And in that moment, surrounded by love and the promise of a brighter future, she felt a sense of peace that she had long thought lost. The weeks following the custody ruling were a whirlwind of activity and emotion for Grace Walker and her children, Lucas and Lily. Moving from the Grand Harrington estate to Grace's modest but cozy home in the heart of Burlington, Vermont, was a significant adjustment for everyone. The children, used to the expansive grounds and luxurious comforts of Nicholas Harrington's mansion, now found themselves in a much smaller space. But what the new home lacked in grandeur, it made up for in warmth and love. Grace had worked tirelessly to prepare the house for their arrival. She had redecorated the children's rooms, letting them pick out their own bedding, furniture, and even wall colors. Lucas chose a space-themed room with glow-in-the-dark stars scattered across a dark blue ceiling, while Lily opted for a fairy tale theme, complete with pastel pink walls and a canopy bed draped in gauzy fabric. Seeing their excitement as they helped set up their new rooms filled Grace's heart with joy. "I hope you like it," Grace said nervously as the children explored the house for the first time. Lucas turned to her, a small smile on his face. "It's nice," he said. "It feels like home." Lily nodded, hugging her stuffed rabbit close. "Yeah. It's not as big as the other house, but it's cozy." Grace knelt down and hugged them both. "That's what I wanted, a place where we can all feel safe and happy." Creating a routine was the next challenge. Grace was determined to provide her children with stability, something they hadn't always had during their years at the Harrington estate. While Nicholas had ensured they were well cared for, Grace knew there was no substitute for a parent's consistent presence. Mornings began with Grace making breakfast, pancakes on weekdays and scrambled eggs on weekends. Lucas and Lily would chatter excitedly at the table about their plans for the day, their growing comfort evident in their bright smiles. After school, they would do homework together at the kitchen table, and Grace would help them with tricky math problems or read over their writing assignments. Evenings were reserved for bonding. They played board games, watched movies, or went for walks in the nearby park. Grace taught them how to bake cookies and even let them help her plant flowers in the small garden behind the house. Slowly but surely, the children began to open up, their laughter becoming more frequent, their trust in her deepening, but not every moment was smooth. The transition brought its share of challenges, particularly for Lucas, who struggled to adjust to the sudden changes in his life. He missed the familiarity of the estate and the structured environment Nicholas had provided. On more than one occasion, Grace found him sitting quietly in his room, staring out the window with a faraway look in his eyes. One evening, as Grace was tucking Lucas into bed, she decided to address his feelings head-on. "Lucas, is everything okay?" she asked gently, sitting on the edge of his bed. He hesitated, fiddling with the corner of his blanket. "I miss the other house sometimes," he admitted. It was big, and there was always someone around. Grace nodded, her heart aching for him. "I understand," she said. "It's okay to miss it. That place was your home for a long time. But I want you to know that this is your home now, too, and I'll do everything I can to make it a place you love." Lucas looked up at her, his expression conflicted. "It's not that I don't like it here," he said. I don't know how to feel sometimes." Grace leaned in and took his hand. "It's okay to feel that way," she said. "This is a big change for all of us, and it's going to take time. But we're in this together, Lucas. You, me, and Lily. We're a family, and we'll figure it out." Her words seemed to comfort him, and for the first time in days, he leaned into her embrace. "Thanks, Mom," he said softly, and Grace's heart swelled at the sound of that single, precious word. One Saturday afternoon, as the family was enjoying a picnic in their backyard, they heard the sound of a car pulling into the driveway. Grace stood up, puzzled, as a sleek black sedan came to a stop. The driver's door opened, and Nicholas Harrington stepped out, his usual stoic demeanor softened by a rare smile. "Nicholas!" Grace exclaimed, surprised but pleased. "What brings you here?" "I was in the area for business," Nicholas replied, his gaze shifting to Lucas and Lily, who were watching him curiously. "And I wanted to see how everyone is settling in." The children ran to greet him, their faces lighting up at the sight of their old guardian. "Mr. Harrington!" Lily cried, hugging him tightly. "We missed you." Nicholas crouched down, returning the hug. "I missed you too," he said warmly. "It's good to see you both looking so happy." The visit was brief but meaningful. Nicholas brought gifts for the children, a telescope for Lucas and a set of art supplies for Lily, and spent time catching up with them. Grace watched from a distance, her heart full of gratitude for the man who had cared for her children when she couldn't. As Nicholas prepared to leave, he pulled Grace aside. "You're doing a wonderful job," he said quietly. "They're thriving, Grace. I couldn't be happier for you." Tears pricked Grace's eyes as she nodded. "Thank you, Nicholas. For everything." That evening, as the family sat together in the living room, Lucas and Lily couldn't stop talking about Nicholas's visit. Grace listened with a smile, grateful for the bond they still shared with him. Later, after the children had gone to bed, Grace sat alone in the quiet of the house, reflecting on how far they had come. The journey had been anything but easy, and there were still challenges ahead. But for the first time in years, she felt a sense of peace. Her children were with her, safe and happy. The house was filled with laughter and love, and the bonds between them were growing stronger every day. Grace knew there would be more hurdles to overcome, but she also knew that they would face them together, as a family. And that, she realized, was all she had ever wanted. As weeks turned into months, Grace Walker and her children, Lucas and Lily, began to settle into their new life. The house grew warmer, not just in temperature but in spirit. Lucas and Lily's laughter echoed through the halls, and their bond with Grace grew deeper each day. Yet, despite the joy, Grace couldn't ignore a lingering sense that something was still holding Lucas back. He had become quieter during family outings, more reserved when they spoke about their past. Grace suspected he was grappling with emotions he didn't yet know how to express. Determined to help him open up, Grace decided to create a special day for just the two of them. One sunny Saturday morning, Grace woke Lucas early with a smile. "Hey, bud. How about a day just for us? I thought we could go fishing by the lake and grab some ice cream after." Lucas blinked at her, clearly surprised. "Just us?" he asked. "Just us," Grace confirmed. "Lily gets her turn next weekend. Today is all about you." A small smile crept across Lucas's face. "Okay. That sounds fun." They packed a picnic basket and headed to the nearby lake. The drive was quiet but comfortable, the windows down to let in the crisp autumn air. Grace glanced over at Lucas occasionally, taking in the sight of her growing boy, his thoughtful expression, the way his hands fiddled with the straps of his fishing rod. She felt a pang of gratitude and sorrow for the years they had lost, but she pushed those thoughts aside, focusing on the moment. When they arrived, the lake sparkled under the morning sun. They set up their fishing gear on a small dock, the peaceful sound of lapping water surrounding them. Grace taught Lucas how to bait the hook and cast his line, smiling at his determined attempts. "I think I've got it," Lucas said, his voice tinged with pride as his line landed perfectly in the water. "You're a natural," Grace said, ruffling his hair. "Your grandpa used to take me fishing when I was your age. He'd always say, 'Patience is the key, Grace.' I think he was trying to teach me more than just fishing." Lucas chuckled, his tension easing slightly. "Like what?" "Like how to wait for the good things in life," Grace said, her voice soft. "Even when it feels like they'll never come." Lucas was quiet for a moment, watching his line bob in the water. "Did you wait for us?" he asked suddenly. Grace's chest tightened, but she kept her tone steady. "Every single day," she said. "I never stopped waiting or hoping. And I would have kept waiting forever if it meant finding you and Lily." Lucas looked down, his fingers gripping the handle of his fishing rod. "I didn't think we'd ever have a mom again," he admitted. At Mr. Harrington's house, it felt safe, but it didn't feel like a family. Grace's heart ached at his words. She reached over, gently placing her hand over his. "I'm so sorry you had to go through that, Lucas," she said. "But we're a family now, and I promise you'll never have to feel alone again." After fishing, and catching 2 small trout, much to Lucas's delight, they spread a blanket on the grass for their picnic. As they ate sandwiches and shared a thermos of hot chocolate, Lucas surprised Grace by asking a question she hadn't expected. "Do you think Mr. Harrington misses us?" he asked, his tone cautious. Grace nodded thoughtfully. "I think he does. He cared about you and Lily a lot. He gave you a home when you needed one, and I'll always be grateful for that." Lucas hesitated, then spoke again. "He always said he wasn't good at being around kids, but he tried really hard. I think I miss him a little." Grace smiled gently. "It's okay to miss him, Lucas. He was an important part of your life. You don't have to stop caring about him just because we're here now." Lucas looked at her, his eyes searching hers. "You're not mad?" "Of course not," Grace said. "Caring about someone doesn't take away from the love we have for each other. It's okay to feel both." For the first time in weeks, Lucas's expression softened completely. He leaned into Grace's side, letting her wrap an arm around him. "I'm glad you're our mom," he said quietly. Tears pricked Grace's eyes as she kissed the top of his head. "And I'm glad you're my son." When they returned home that evening, Lucas was visibly lighter, his steps more confident. Lily ran out to greet them, demanding to know all about their day. Lucas recounted their adventures with enthusiasm, even offering to teach Lily how to fish during her turn with Grace next week. As the children played in the living room, Grace sat at the kitchen table, reflecting on the day. She felt a profound sense of hope. Lucas had finally begun to open up, and she could see the trust they were building. It wasn't just about being their mother, it was about proving to them, every single day, that she was there for them. That night, as Grace tucked both children into bed, Lucas whispered, "Good night, Mom," before closing his eyes. The simple word filled her with a joy she couldn't describe. She lingered in the doorway, watching her children sleep, her heart full of love and gratitude. For the first time in years, Grace felt that her family was truly healing. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but in that quiet moment, she knew they were finally on the right path. Together, the first snow of the season dusted Burlington, Vermont, transforming the small town into a winter wonderland. Grace Walker awoke early, the pale morning light filtering through the curtains of her cozy home. She glanced out the window and smiled at the pristine white blanket covering the front yard. Today was a special day, a day she hoped would mark a new beginning for her family. Lucas and Lily were still asleep, their laughter from the night before echoing in Grace's mind. They had spent hours decorating the Christmas tree, each ornament carefully chosen and placed with a sense of joy that warmed Grace's heart. It had been their first Christmas together as a family, and for the first time in years, the house felt alive. Determined to make the day memorable, Grace prepared a surprise breakfast. She whipped up a batch of fluffy pancakes, drizzling them with maple syrup and topping them with whipped cream and fresh berries. The aroma wafted through the house, and soon, Lucas and Lily appeared in the kitchen, rubbing sleep from their eyes. "Whoa, pancakes!" Lucas exclaimed, his face lighting up. Lily climbed onto her chair, clutching her ever-present stuffed rabbit. "Are these for us, Mom?" she asked. Grace smiled as she placed the plates in front of them. "Of course, sweetheart. Today's a special day, and I thought we'd start it off with something sweet." Lucas eyed her curiously as he poured a generous amount of syrup onto his pancakes. "Why is today special?" he asked between bites. Grace hesitated for a moment, then sat down across from them. "Because today, I wanted to share something important with you both." Lily tilted her head, her curiosity piqued. "What is it?" Taking a deep breath, Grace reached for the small box she had placed on the table. She opened it, revealing two delicate silver lockets, each engraved with the children's initials. Inside each locket was a tiny photograph of Grace, Lucas, and Lily together, a keepsake from their first family photo. "These are for you," Grace said, her voice steady but emotional. "I wanted you to have something to remind you of how much I love you, no matter where we are." Lucas picked up his locket, his fingers tracing the engraving. "This is so cool," he said softly. "Thanks, Mom." Lily opened hers, her eyes shining as she looked at the tiny photograph. "I love it," she whispered. "I'll wear it forever." Grace leaned over and hugged them both. "You two mean everything to me," she said. "I know we've had a lot of changes this year, but I want you to know how proud I am of you. You've been so brave and strong, and I'm so lucky to be your mom." After breakfast, Grace announced the second part of the day's surprise, a visit to the Harrington estate. While the children were excited to see Nicholas Harrington again, Grace felt a mix of emotions. It had been months since she'd last spoken to Nicholas, but she wanted to show Lucas and Lily that the people who cared for them before still held an important place in their lives. When they arrived, the estate looked as grand as ever, its snow-covered grounds glistening in the winter sun. Nicholas met them at the front door, his typically reserved expression softening at the sight of the children. "Lucas, Lily," he said warmly, crouching down to greet them. It's good to see you. The children ran to him, their voices overlapping as they shared stories about their new home, their school, and the locket surprise from earlier. Nicholas listened attentively, a rare smile gracing his face. Grace watched the interaction with a sense of gratitude. "Thank you for letting us visit," she said quietly when Nicholas turned to her. "It means a lot to them, and to me." Nicholas nodded. "They'll always have a place here," he said simply. "I'm glad to see them thriving with you." Inside, the children were delighted to find that Nicholas had set up a small surprise of his own, a sleigh ride around the estate's expansive grounds. Wrapped in warm blankets, the family climbed into the sleigh, the jingling bells and crisp air filling the atmosphere with magic. As they glided through the snowy landscape, Lucas and Lily's laughter rang out, blending with the gentle rhythm of the horses' hooves. After the sleigh ride, Nicholas pulled Grace aside while the children played in the snow. They stood near the large picture windows of the estate's drawing room, the warm glow of the fireplace illuminating their faces. "You've done an incredible job, Grace," Nicholas said, his tone uncharacteristically sincere. "They're happy. That's all that matters." Grace smiled, her eyes misting with emotion. "I couldn't have done it without your support. You gave them a home when I couldn't, and for that, I'll always be grateful." Nicholas nodded, his gaze thoughtful. "They're where they belong now. With you." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching Lucas and Lily build a snowman outside. Grace felt a sense of closure, knowing that while their journey had been filled with heartache, it had also brought them to this moment of peace. That evening, as they returned home, Grace lit a fire in the living room, and the family settled onto the couch with mugs of hot cocoa. Lucas and Lily curled up on either side of her, their lockets gleaming in the firelight. "Mom," Lily said softly, "this was the best day ever." Lucas nodded in agreement. "Yeah. Thanks for everything." Grace wrapped her arms around them, her heart full. "You two are my everything," she said. "And no matter what, we'll always have each other." As the snow continued to fall outside, Grace realized that this was what she had fought so hard for, a home filled with love, laughter, and the promise of a bright future. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but for the first time in years, she felt certain that they would face them together, stronger and closer than ever before. Her family was whole again, and that was the greatest gift of all. The ending of this story is a heartfelt reminder of the power of perseverance and love. Grace's journey to reunite with her children was filled with challenges, emotional hurdles, and moments of doubt, but her unwavering determination brought her family back together. The bond they rebuilt is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the beauty of second chances. It's a story that leaves us inspired to fight for what truly matters in life: family, trust, and unconditional love. If this story moved you as much as it moved me, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more touching and powerful tales. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to share where you're watching from. We love hearing from our incredible community.